Namaste, and welcome back to the Awaken Living with Nabodhi podcast. Today we're discussing relationships and how to bring consciousness into any relationship, whether it's with ourselves or with a lover, our children, our community. Everything in the universe is in relationship to something else. And so today's discussion is on how to create consciousness throughout our relationship. Now, every soul's longing in this world is for connection. And there's a deep need or a deep desire that is woven into the human heart, to the human experience. And that is a longing to be held, to be seen, to be understood, and to be loved, and to love. And behind every desire that we have, behind our pain and our joy, and behind every pursuit, there is that single thread of connection, whether we're feeling the connection or we're longing for that connection. So with a conscious relationship, it's not merely about finding the one or a soulmate or in avoiding conflict, never having an argument, never having struggle. It's a pathway into our own awakening, into our own healing process, and into our own wholeness. So whether or not we're with ourselves or with the beloved, our partner, our lover, whether we're hanging out with our best friend, a teacher, or we're in the temple with the divine, we each have a unique relationship that is ultimately an opportunity and an invitation in every moment to remember who we truly are. So with that longing inside of us to be felt, to be known, to be loved without conditions, and with each desire, with each conflict, with each attraction, with each heartbreak, there is that simple core impulse, and that's connection. Connection is everything. How connected are we to our breath, to ourself, to our body, to the earth beneath our feet? And it's that connection that determines how present we show up in life, how present we show up for another person. And to create a conscious relationship with anything or anyone, it begins when we stop seeing our connections as something that we need to get, something we need to achieve, and we see those connections as an opportunity to remember ourselves, to remember presence, to remember love. So we're going to explore that in this episode. It's an opportunity, an invitation to look at ourselves. And we see on the internet all the time, on social media, these perfectly curated people, perfectly curated couples who never have pain, who never suffer, who have the perfect tantric bliss. That's not reality. Real relationship comes from living in the present moment, and it becomes a spiritual practice when we're committed to it. And it's difficult and it requires work, but it leads to a new level of awareness within ourselves and an awakening. And so ultimately, our relationships become a path to ourselves. Our relationships are the practice, and they are the guru, they are the teacher. And the lessons in life, they're not easy, because if we're truly to be in a conscious relationship, we're actually entering into a PhD program that requires a lot of work, okay? So in this episode, we're going to really discuss and uncover the art of creating a conscious relationship through the lens of Ayurveda, through Tantra, yoga, Vedic psychology, Vedanta. And I want to look at it from the foundation of individual self-awareness, because that's where our hearts blossom, that's where our consciousness blossoms, and that's where union really happens. So first, we must see our own self as our first beloved. If you want to know union with another person, we need to become very familiar, intimately familiar with the inner workings of our own being, because that's where all consciousness begins. In the yogic and Vedantic philosophies, the self is not the personality. It's not the ego structure. Our self is the Atman, the indwelling eternal witness. And likewise with Ayurveda, there's this concept of swasthya, to be established in oneself. That doesn't mean just physically. It means to be established in the swa, the self, the eternal self, the swarupa, the true form of consciousness. And to be established that deeply in consciousness requires consistent practice. It requires us to try to create balance in every aspect of our lives. And that requires regular attuning, retuning and attuning, like tuning a guitar that's constantly going out of tune. Guitars go out of tune when it's played. We go out of tune. We need to have attunement. And to do that, we have to examine what the Vedic texts tell us are these samskaras, these vasanas. They're karmic patterns that we've brought with us from early childhood, from previous lives. They're the unconscious projections that shape our relational patterns. And they shape our lives if they go unexamined. But these are vibrational patterns, frequencies, like a groove in a record or a path in the forest that's been walked over and over and over again. They're neither good or bad, right or wrong. They're just the patterns that we've created. And so if we're not stoked on the pattern that we've created, we need to create a new pattern. And there's this concept made famous by the great Rishi Ramana Maharshi called Atma Vicharya, self-inquiry. And he asks us to ask ourselves, who am I? That's the fundamental question. Who am I? Who am I beyond the role I play in the relationship? Because we're somebody different to everybody. You may be a son or a husband or a father or a friend or a coworker or a teammate, but that's not who you are. We have to find out who we are. And William Blake, in his book, The Doors of Perception, asks a very fundamental, or says a very fundamental thing. When the doors of perception have been cleansed, everything appears as it truly is, infinite. So the clearer the inner lenses, the clearer our inner reflection is, the less we get entangled in our needs for external validation. We don't need to be rescued. We don't need to rescue someone. We don't need others' approval. We learn to approach ourselves. We learn to approach life. We learn to approach love, not as a hungry child, or as the Buddhists call it, the hungry ghost. We approach ourself, our life, our relationships, and everything in it as a conscious being who knows themselves, who knows their own worth, their soul's own worth. And Ayurveda really helps us to understand that in a deep level through the model of the doshas. If you've been listening to this podcast, I'm sure you understand what the doshas are, the constitutional types, vata, pitta, kapha, because they don't just govern our body, they govern our mind, they govern our emotions, they govern our ways that we love and connect. So understanding our constitution can really help us understand our relational gifts as well as our challenges. If you're a vata constitution, your predominant elements are air and fire, or air and ether. And that makes you sensitive, and sensitivity is a beautiful thing. Imagine if everyone was super sensitive on this planet, we wouldn't hurt each other. It also creates spontaneity, and it's imaginative and creative. But when it's not really in balance, there's the tendency towards insecurity or abandonment wounds or just overthinking in relationship, and it makes commitment difficult. It's always thinking the grass may be greener on the other side of the hill, or maybe on the other side of the dating app, or on the other side of the yoga classroom, something like that. For a pitta constitution, they're predominantly very passionate and fiery, driven, and can be loyal, but when they're out of balance, they can become jealous or controlling, needing to control the situation or the relationship, and even reactive in anger and violence. A lot of the violence we see in the world is created by pitta people who have not balanced themselves. And then kapha is the water and earth element, and they're typically very nurturing, compassionate. They're steady, they're devoted, but they struggle with attachment, over-attachment, codependency, or even inertia and different types of enmeshment. So when they're balanced, that's our gift, that's our strength, that's our light. But when they're unbalanced, the doshas distort our ability to communicate and connect, but harmonize them, and we become portals of divine love. And one of the things that Ayurveda, just reminding you, that one of the things that Ayurveda really encourages is that dinacharya, that daily ritual, that daily practice. And one of the most potent dinacharyas is self-oil massage because it cultivates oxytocin in ourselves. It balances the nervous system. It grounds the prana. It grounds the life force, and it helps us to create emotional safety within. So it's one of the things that Ayurveda encourages, and I encourage everyone to do on a daily basis, is a self-oil massage. It really helps. And it sounds like such a simple thing, but in creating relationship with ourselves and the world, it's such a simple and profound thing. It makes all the difference, truly. Such a simple thing, oil massage. And then looking at what that oil massage does, it's stimulating the pranas. We have these channels, these shrotas, the Ayurvedic and yogic anatomy. We have these 72,000 channels that carry our life force. We also have these chakras and koshas, these energetic fields. And it's in these koshas that really help us to map the terrain of our intimacy. They're called the panchamaya koshas, the 5 sheaths, and they're the layers of our being that hold our patterns, our frequency, from the gross to the subtle. And so to really engage in consciousness, to gauge in consciousness relationships, we really want to look at all 5 of these levels and try and create some regularity and union in all of these. So the first one that we need to understand is the annamaya kosha. That's the physical body. And that's related to our touch, our physical touch, our presence, our sensuality, our sexuality, our eros, our erotic intelligence. And to really have that established as a core fundamental part of who we are. Our sensuality, our sexuality, our eros, that's not wrong. That's not bad. That's not a sin. If you're a monk living in an ashram as a celibate, okay, but you still have to touch the senses. You still have 5 sense organs that are perceiving the external world. We need to be in balance with those. And then pranamaya kosha is the pranic field. It's the energetic body. It relates to the breath, but it's the overall vitality. It's the overall life force that we radiate with. And it's a major part of co-regulation of the nervous system. So if the nervous system is constantly in the sympathetic fight, freeze, fawn, or flight state, we can't regulate ourselves, and then we can't regulate with the external world, let alone another person. So that's where the breathwork practices, mindful breathing, slowing the breathing down. As the great Rishi Krishnamacharya said, breathe and everything changes. And so when we breathe consciously with awareness, with love and devotion to ourself, to our practice, to our life, our energy increases and our awareness of our physical body increases. And then there's manomaya kosha, the mental body. And this is where we have our thought patterns develop and we hold to, and our beliefs and our mental habits and all the neurology that we have and the neuroses and all of that. It's in the mind. And the mind is actually our only true problem in the world. There's a saying, we cannot solve the problems of the world with the same thinking that created them. It's the same thing with our own lives. We can't solve the problems of our life thinking the same way. We have to think in whole new patterns. And so accessing the mental body is kind of a bridge between the material and the spiritual, although there's really no separation. And when the physical body is strong and when the breath is strong, the annamaya kosha, pranamaya kosha are strong and balanced, and that supports our mind being able to regulate even in challenging and difficult situations. Then we move on to the vijnanamaya kosha, which is the wisdom body, and that is our psychic intuition, our intuition. We know someone's going to call us. We know someone's coming. We know about an earthquake or anything that's going to happen. We know we were going to meet that person at this time, and it just happens. It's a deep intuition. It's a deep knowing where we're in tune with nature and the creation, and we're in this flow state where we're getting the information as we need it. And in here is also where we have our value system. It's where we have discrimination, mindful discrimination or discernment. It's where we use what we know and what we've experienced as a way of navigating our time here in the material world. And when these first 4 koshas, these first 4 energy, physical energy, mental knowledge bodies are balanced, then we can enter into the anandamaya kosha, the bliss body, and that's union. divine communion. It's what happens spontaneously when there's no obscuration of truth. There's no obscuration of love and light in our system. When our relationships are only rooted in the physical body or the emotional body, when there's challenges, when there's pressure, we collapse. And we need pressure to grow. There's the story of the lobster. When it's time for a lobster to grow, the shell puts immense pressure on it. And so then it dives down deep into the ocean and it finds a rock, a crevice, a safe place to shed its old shell and then to grow a new one. And it doesn't come back out until the new shell is grown. So the pressure we feel is the universe telling us, our soul telling us, it's time to grow. And we don't allow that time. We don't allow that retreat as much as we should in the modern world. But when we have pressure, we need to really look at what that pressure is coming from. Is it coming from the outside or the inside? Someone else telling us, or is it our soul telling us? And so we need to be rooted in all of these things, the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual wisdom. And when two people meet through this, that love, that embodiment, that dedication to self-growth becomes a yogic practice. And it becomes the path of sacred union. It becomes the path that we can use to look at ourselves so clearly that we can awaken to who we are and dissolve who we're not. And that's really where tantra and polarity and the dance of intimacy come into play, because true relationship, true tantra is a sacred mirror. That tantric worldview is that every relationship is what's called lila in Sanskrit. It means play. It's not just playing on the playground. It's a divine play. It's actually the play of Shiva and Shakti, the pure consciousness and the pure energy of the universe. So your beloved, your person you're in a relationship, is no longer just your partner, just your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, they, them, whatever. They become the mirror of your own awakening. And that's really what yoga and Ayurveda and Tantra are trying to teach us, is that the real purpose of intimacy is not for getting our needs met or just pure pleasure alone. It's not for possession. It's not just for pure comfort. It is for that metamorphosis, that transformation. And it's through that sacred union that we can awaken and activate the dormant creative energy inside of us. And when that happens, it's like a big flashlight. And often when you have a big flashlight, you can see things more clearly, or a microscope, or even a telescope. And so what we're often seeing more clearly is our own shadow. And it's coming up to be cleaned out, to be examined, and to be let go of. Our partner, our relationships are not the cause of our pain. They're not the cause of the shadow. They're just the light that's allowing us to see it. So the whole blame, game, guilt, shame thing should disappear. Your partner is not responsible for you. You are. And you want to find someone, you want to find relationships, whether it's a friendship or a lover, who is capable of holding you and you're capable of holding them in the shadow while we dance through all of it. And that's what it means to truly embody the divine. In the sacred path of relationship, it's not where we can hide anymore. It's really becomes the fuel for the fire, and it's the fire that's going to burn anything that's not truth, anything that's not love, and anything that's blocking you from your own freedom. And if you're not ready for that, the relationships don't work. That's why there's so much divorce. There's 50% of people who are getting married are getting divorced because everyone just wants superficial connection. But that's because we're not connecting to the self. So to understand this, we need to understand that dance of polarity, because polarity creates energy. It creates a spark. And we're going to refer to these as masculine and feminine energies. It's Shiva and Shakti. But true polarity in reality, it's not about gender identification. It doesn't really matter how you identify in this play. It's an energetic flow. It's an energetic field. Everyone has this within them. It's the transcending of those energies. It's the embodying of the full experience of being. In the Vedic path in the Vedic iconography, there's the image of Ardhanarishwar. It's half male, half female, half Shiva, half Shakti. And actually a whole being is balanced in both of those energies. And we can play and dance in between those energies as the moment dictates. So Shiva is typically given the masculine essence, and that is really just pure awareness. It's the stillness, it's the presence, it's the witnessing awareness behind the whole of creation. It's witnessing itself. It's actually, in the highest form, it's near guna. It's without quality. Gunas are qualities. The purest form of Shiva is near guna. It's without a quality other than the witness state. And then Shakti is everything in manifestation, and it's given that female, feminine essence. That's the energy. Everything we see, everything we touch, all of creation in the manifested state is Shakti, is divine feminine. It's from the divine mother that everything came. And that is a constant flow. It's a constant movement. It's emotion. It's sensuality. It's eros. It's always dancing, always ebb and flowing. That's all Shakti. The whole dance of creation is actually Shakti. Shiva is the witness behind it. And in a conscious relationship within ourself, with another, these polarities are dancing. One holds the structure to witness itself, and the other moves freely within that. And when polarity is lost on a major level, self is lost, but also if you're in a relationship, the attraction is lost. That spark that keeps the dance going is lost. When it's restored in ourself, intimacy becomes highly electric and devotional. And that is part of our own path. That's the bhakti path, the path of love. When that feminine essence, that Shakti, is alive in us, and Shiva is there to witness it, to bear witness to itself, playing and dancing, we're alive. We have infinite amount of energy. We can get so much done, not from a striving and needing to, but just because we're a creative flow. To create polarity, we need to actually be able to alternate roles of witnessing and moving. There needs to be that meditative stillness. There needs to be times where we just witness, we watch. Even though the mind is thinking, we're watching the thoughts, we're watching the play, like watching the clouds go by. And in relationship, we need to create a balance of one person leading, another person surrendering. This often can happen in breath work or different rituals, because we learn to trust in that rhythm between giving and receiving. And that's true for ourselves. We need to trust that we can sit still and witness, and we need to trust that we can then be able to sit up and go create something. I'm very excited to share with you Real Mushrooms, the sponsor of the Awakened Living podcast. I use their mushrooms every single day because they've genuinely changed my life. I trust them because they have 50 years of expertise and use 100% organic mushrooms, 0 grains, 0 fillers, which are found in most common mushroom products on the market. They use just real, organic, clinically tested mushrooms. Every morning, I use lion's mane to sharpen my thinking. I use cordyceps to give me the clean energy I need for the day. I use chaga to strengthen my immune system. And when stress hits, and it does, I use reishi to bring me back to center. With their products, you actually feel the difference. Through the end of March, Real Mushrooms gives Awakened Living with Nabodhi podcast listeners 25% off their entire first order. Use the code AWAKEN25 at checkout to get 25% off your first purchase. You can find their link in the show notes or visit nabodhi.com/mushrooms to get yours today. This brings us to the concept of the deep sensual, sexual part of this, because sexuality can be a spiritual practice. It's actually a prayer. And in Ayurveda, it's one whole limb. It's the limb of Vajikarana, the aphrodisiacs. And it builds our ojas. It builds our vitality. It's creative energy. The whole universe came from sex. The whole universe came from the Big Bang. And everything in it came from an ovum and a sperm. It's Shiva and Shakti. It's divine creation. So sex isn't good, bad, right, or wrong. Just like money, just like food, just like electricity, just like fire. You can cook your food. You can also burn down the forest. It's how we use anything. It's the intention behind it. Conscious sexuality, it's not performance-based. It's presence. Sting and Trudy, his wife, they have this big thing. They talk about he had an 8-hour tantra session. That's great. Hopefully it was just straight out of mindfulness and not performance-based. What matters most is our presence in anything we do, whether it's sex or anything else. But whatever we do, it should become sacred, right? When we're eating food, this is what Tantra actually is. It's the tanmatras, the organs of perception. We have eyes that see, we have nose that smell, tongue that tastes, ears that hear, and skin that touches. So the tantras are the tanmatras, purifying the tanmatras into devotional service, into devotional worship. So that includes making our sex sacred. And in that, consent becomes a devotional pathway. May I love you, may I serve you, may I worship you. The breath is the gateway. It's what moves the energy. It's the prana. And then there's eye gazing as meditation. And, there's so many tantric practices out there, and there's so much new age foo-foo tantric practices. Now, the eye gazing and sitting and holding heart, that's part of it, but that's not it. You don't need to spend $3,000 for a weekend of looking into your beloved's eyes and putting your hand on their heart. I can teach you that in 5 minutes. Those are valid pathways, breathing up and down the spine, circulating your breath, holding each other to create more bliss. And when it's done mindfully, that orgasm, it's not just a release, it's an energy awakening. Actually, I think it's in French, orgasm means little ego death. The individual self dissolves into the cosmic self, into cosmic bliss. That's what the Big Bang was. It was a massive cosmic orgasm that went out for about 300,000 years as a light wave of frequency, and then the 5 elements were created. That's how we came into existence. So tantric union, done mindfully, becomes true sadhana. It becomes a spiritual discipline when the genitals and the heart and the consciousness and the breath and the presence, all of it become aligned. Lovemaking is a portal to samadhi. To truly make love, though, is to dissolve the I into the cosmic vastness of being. I should disappear. There's just breath. There's just presence. And where that fails most of the time is because of our samskaras, the samskara loop, these patterns that we keep repeating, the shadow that we share that's not being brought to light. If we're just all bringing samskaras and these vasanas and patterns to each other to bounce off each other, that's not light, that's not loving, that's not true tantra, that's not true merging. So again, we're not going to solve the problems with the same thinking that created them, okay? The definition of insanity is to keep doing the same action over and over and over again and expect a different result. And that's kind of what these samskaras are. Basically, they're just deep mental, emotional imprints that are formed through our past experiences and most often our past lives. And very frequently, we're drawn to partners who activate our deepest wounds. Now, there's spiritual purpose to that because we can heal them if we're conscious. Like abandonment attracts avoidant personality types. If you have control issues, you end up attracting someone with chaos. If you have guilt and shame, it craves adoration. So there's these different ways that these samskaras attract. And it's fine to do that. It's fine to attract those samskaras if you're devoted to healing them. And again, the partner is not the cause of them. Unless we make them conscious, the karmic loops will sabotage even the most sacred connection. And we have to do the work. And most people aren't willing to do that. So divorce is skyrocketing. And again, going back to that Atmavicharya, like that's how we heal, through the self-inquiry. That is our path to awareness. Okay. Beyond, if we're just working on the personal level, beyond who am I, we need to ask the fundamental question about our pain and our attachments. So like, what pain am I unconsciously avoiding? And what pain am I unconsciously avoiding through a specific behavior or a specific attachment? And really understanding that the key isn't fixing your partner, it's fixing yourself. I mean, you're not broken. Those are adaptations. They're survival adaptations. All of our wounds and traumas are survival adaptations. We did the best we could. But if we're becoming conscious, now we know they no longer serve us. So we want to become curious about our triggers. Why am I being triggered? Why is what this person said bothering me so much? What's going on inside me? What's deeper? We need to breathe. We need to slow down the reactivity. It only happens through breath and embodiment, through the Annamaya kosha and the pranamaya kosha. We have to be able to sit in the body and breathe and just notice. It's not that it's not uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable. But we have to be okay not being okay sometimes. We have to be okay sitting and feeling the pain and witnessing the pain and giving it love and compassion and empathy and holding it like we would hold a beloved little child who's in pain. And when we can breathe, we can notice the somatic experience, the somatic response. And I love the word somatic because it comes from soma, bliss. When we can breathe, when we can be mindful and offer presence to it, it releases. And then when there's nothing there blocking us or holding us down, we're free, we're in bliss. But we need to identify the inner child or the unmet need that's behind whatever pattern we're engaging in. So this is truly where a conscious relationship becomes a spiritual practice, even when there's rupture. And there will be rupture. There has to be for healing to happen, to get to the depth of who we are. So even when rupture happens, it's met with radical honesty and that compassionate, empathic self-inquiry. But we hold ourselves accountable. We hold ourselves responsible. No one else is responsible for us. And in order to do that, we need to have a healthy way of communicating, because communication can either separate people and families and communities and countries, or it can form as a bridge. It can unite two banks of the river. So what yoga tells us is that there's these principles, Satya and Ahimsa. And in the conscious relationship, we really want to rely on those. Satya is truthfulness. And it doesn't mean radical truthfulness no matter what you say. If it's hurtful, you don't necessarily need to say it. But we're being truthful with ourselves. And Ahimsa, not doing harm. Those need to be fundamental. And we need to really learn how to speak to ourselves and others with clarity, with kindness, and with courage. And there's 4 primary gateways to conscious speaking. Number 1, is it true? Number 2, is it necessary? Number 3, is it kind? And number 4, is it in the appropriate moment? Is it timely? And there's actually this acronym called THINK, and we should think before we speak. T, is it thoughtful? H, is it helpful? I, is it inspired or inspiring? N, is it necessary? And K, is it kind? So we should think before we speak. And that includes the inner speak, what we're saying to ourselves. But the 4 basic gateways to conscious communication is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And is it timely? And we have 1 mouth and 2 ears, so we should do twice as much listening as we do talking. So we can make listening a devotional practice as well. And listening does not mean waiting to speak, which is what so many people do. We often have a response prepared before the person we're talking to has finished what we're saying, so we don't even actually know what they're saying. We just have our automatic response, or what we believe that what we have to say is more important than them. But when we can listen from a place of concern, of compassion, of curiosity, of love, we hold that space for the person to speak without interrupting, and we truly are listening to what they're saying. We're not just listening to the words, we're tracking the emotions behind the words and tracking the body movement, and we're actually looking at them in the eyes because we value what this person has to say. And we remain open without needing to be defensive. We just are listening to this other person's experience of life. So that's another foundation of real Tantra, is to receive the other person fully, not just the words, their full energy, their breath, their essence, their presence. And in that space, that's when we can actually become empathic. We develop empathy, and a relationship, whether it's with your child or your parents or your coworker, it becomes sacred. Every relationship becomes sacred. And if we do have rupture, how do we repair? Because no matter how conscious we become, rupture is inevitable. That's been my experience. Maybe that's not true for everyone, but that's been my experience. And I've never met a couple who has not had rupture. And originally, the first rupture is with ourselves. We believed that we were separate from God, that we were kicked out of the garden, that we're not lovable, whatever it is, that we're not enough, that we have to achieve more to be worthy. So the rupture first began with ourselves. So are we working on healing our own rupture? But in relationship, it's essential if you want to maintain the relationship and keep growing. And if you decide to get divorced or separate, and sometimes that's necessary if violence is involved, but those patterns are just going to show up with the next partner and the next partner and the next partner. So it's not that rupture shouldn't happen. It's how we repair trust after the rupture. And the first part is owning our part. We have to take responsibility for what we've said or what we've done without justifying or defending the actions, just owning the part. And really identifying and naming and honoring, acknowledging the impact that we've had on the other person. And this, again, is not just in your intimate relationship. It's with anybody. And if we can own our part in it, again, without the justification, without defending, without needing to be our point taken as being right, and we acknowledge that we've hurt the person, we can offer genuine empathy. And in that, we can share our vulnerabilities with each other. And the best we can do is commit to presence. I'll do better. I'll try to be more mindful. I'm a work in progress. I'm learning. We're human. And we're in the school of life. We are going to make mistakes. We are going to fail the exam. We are going to stumble and fall and get scraped up and bloody. A relationship is there to pick you up when you fall. And it's great to make mistakes. Just don't keep making the same mistake. The mistake is so that you learn the lesson. So we need to keep making mistakes, but learn the lesson from which mistake you're making. So when there is rupture, and there will be, use the rupture to grow. It's very simple. And when that is navigated with love, that strengthens the bridge of the relationship. And when that relationship is firm in its growth process, we take that into the community. Or if you don't have a relationship, you just take your work into the community. We have a relational dharma. We have soul contracts with others. We have soul contracts with our family, with our community, with our country, with our planet, with our solar system, with our galaxy, with the intergalactic galaxies. We have these contracts because ultimately the truth is there's only one of us in drag, and we created so we could play with ourselves, so we could meet. We can only meet through form, and we can only dance through form. So we have a relational dharma. And a lot of Vedic astrology looks at that. Ayurveda looks at that. And ultimately, what these soul contracts or soul agreements do is serve as a process of mutual evolution. We're growing together. We have karmic ties that show up in different ways. We have teachers or guides who can crack us open to ourself and to the universe. We may have a lover who activates us in a healing way, that we find a part of ourselves that we didn't know existed. Or if you're parents, maybe you have children who are teaching you acceptance and surrender and to let go of control. Or you have friends who mirror your gifts, and you have really trusted friends who are willing to call you out when you're not using your gifts for the highest dharma. So whatever the relationships are, whatever the soul contracts are, we're in community together. We have communities of bacteria and viruses in our gut that create health in the body. We have communities of cells stimulating different hormones and neurons to do different things. Without community, we don't exist. So our practice is to show up in these communities, in these relationships, with as much presence as possible. Without clinging, without rejecting, we're just there to experience. in yoga, there's this concept of raga and vacia. They're like two core movements of our mind, clinging or rejecting. We're always clinging or rejecting something, someone, an experience, even our own pain. And it's because we don't want to experience pain. It's really simple. We want pleasure, not pain. That's the duality. Raga in this scenario really refers to our attraction. And it's the attraction towards comfort, towards praise, towards pleasure, even the attraction of control. And in that, we do become attached to the outcome. We want it to look this way. We think it should be this way. We have a full knowledge that how we want it to be is how it should be. And in that, we're grasping for people. We're grasping for an experience. We're grasping to our identity. This worked once and it brought me bliss. I want this again and again and again. And that only strengthens our desire and our dependency on the external situation or the external person for us to feel okay. It's really, in Ayurveda, it's rajas. It's a rajasic energy. It's not calm. It's not peaceful. It's not established in the self. And it creates more agitation when it's unmet. And that's really the foundation of addiction, because we want something outside of ourselves to feel okay inside. And, we're not condemning addiction. Everybody wants to feel good. We know that our nature is Satchidananda, that pure bliss consciousness. Everybody wants to feel that. Everyone deserves to feel that. And there's no reason not to, but we have to do it from within. If we do it from without, we're always going to go without. We go within and we'll never go without. The opposite of that is what's called vacia. It means aversion. It means to push away unpleasant experiences. It means to avoid that which we don't want. And it can be anything, but we're averting. We're trying to make sure that we don't suffer. We're trying to make sure that we don't have pain or discomfort, or that we're not blamed. We don't want blame. We don't want someone to say we're the responsible for them. We don't want loss. We want to hold on. And even we have resistance to certain people or certain situations. We're trying to avoid not feeling a certain way. And that leads to suppression. That leads to repression. And that leads to depression ultimately. And when we have so much avoidance or suppression or repression or depression, that eventually creates fear or anger. And when it's fear, that's the tamasic energy. That's the dulling of consciousness. It's dulling of the light. It's dulling of the love. And when it becomes anger, it's rajasic. It becomes reactivity. So there's either contraction or reaction. So this raga and vacia, it's these two things that basically keep us stuck. And ultimately how they work together, in a nutshell, raga chases what feels good and vacia rejects what challenges us, even if it's beneficial for us. And definitely there's times if something is actually life-threatening, we want to avoid that, of course. But on the soul level, on the manasa, the mind expansion level, when they're not balanced, there's a distortion of perception. And that's when the mind suffers, because it's binding the mind and it reinforces the ego pattern. And even on a physiological level, it has a really negative effect because the nervous system is constantly activated. We can't ever relax. It creates these massive emotional mood swings. And that's where so much of the sleeping pills and the antidepressant pills are making billions of dollars, because we don't have a fundamental understanding of ourselves, and we're swinging between these massive pendulums of attachment and aversion. And in that state, it's hard to come up with a rational decision-making process. Our ability to make decisions becomes very narrow. And it's really like, it collapses our ability to make decision. What's the word called? Analysis paralysis. Because the mind's just not clear. We may think we're doing well, but we're actually not. And this is also what creates more unhealthy polarization. I'm not talking about the polarity that creates the spark. I'm talking about what's polarizing. It's putting us on opposite ends. There's no bridge to the two banks of the river. These things have a negative effect on our health and behavior, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and that's what creates the rift in the relationship. So Ayurveda gives us a solution, a cure, a remedy. Cultivate awareness. It's that simple. Cultivate awareness over reaction. But we have to have the awareness that we're not aware. We have to have the awareness that I want to cultivate awareness, so I'm going to sit down and breathe. I'm going to put oil on my body and try and regulate myself on a daily basis. I'm going to create that sattvic state through daily routine, through going to bed at the same time each day, through waking up at a good time, through meditation, through breath work, through eating healthy foods, through the practice of equanimity towards pleasure and pain, towards pleasurable situations and uncomfortable situations. I'm going to try to observe my mind and its places of resistance without reacting, without acting on them unconsciously. And I'm going to try to spend time every day in awareness, in witness consciousness, instead of acting on the never-ending impulses. Real freedom comes when, or at least it begins when, we stop being a slave to our attraction and aversion. And one way that's really helpful, this is actually a traditional Vedic path as well, is Sangha or Satsang. Because we need reflections. If we're just left to our own accord, we might not do so well. So we need what's called satsang or sangha. Sangha is the community of people trying to live in truth. Satsang, it means the gathering of truth, or to be in the company of truth. So we surround ourselves with people who also are aware that we're suffering, and we're aware that we may not be so aware, and that we have these ragas and vacias and some skaras, and we want to end them. So we surround ourselves with people who also want to end them, so we can reflect to each other. And this is also a conscious tantric relationship. It's beyond the partnership, but we're using the community of divine people seeking the divine self, to remember the divine self as a way of growing. So in that, there's a container of wise people, hopefully a guru, a real guru, an enlightened master, a teacher who's done the work, who can guide the community. In Native American traditions and Hawaiian traditions, there's elders who are wise, and they hold the space, they hold the community. And in that conscious holding, that our vulnerability is welcomed. We can be vulnerable in a safe place. And if there's conflict between lovers, between people in the community, it's skillfully held by someone who knows the truth, who knows how to do that. And both unity and diversity are honored. The diversity is that we have our unique path. The unity is that it's not that unique because we're all in it together. But the truth is that the individual healing supports the collective healing. When one person gets enlightened, it creates a ripple effect. When one person in the family becomes free, it's 7 generations become free. And so a community can really become a field where it's safe to love. It's safe to love ourselves. It's safe to love another. It's safe to love the world. And it's held in all of its messiness and all of its magnificent forms, but it's held within a container of truth. And this also relates to not just the community, but the individual family, the families within communities. We used to live in these tribes before so-called civilization, and there was all the families connected to each other. And so, it says it takes a village to raise a child, and that's true. And this comes down to conscious parenting and family systems. Being a single parent is probably one of the most challenging things in the whole world. Being 2 parents with 1 child, we're supposed to raise our children in community. Regardless of having a community to raise your child in or not, bringing consciousness into the family is very important, because a lot of our wounds, our samskaras, our vasanas, these negative patterns that we're trying to heal, started in childhood. And parents need to see the child as an individual soul with its own workings, and not as a possession. And there's a lot of focus now on generational healing, and it's sacred work, but it's hard when one person in a family, and everyone, I don't know, I've never met someone who's not been traumatized, but we have generations of trauma being passed down. And when we become aware of it, it's our responsibility to heal it. And the 7 generations get healed. But that requires bringing consciousness into the family. And we need to have boundaries as protection, not as punishment. We need to give our children boundaries as protection, not as punishment, but communicate why we're doing that and what the intention behind it is. And there's always going to be rupture between parents and child, in families. And again, it's the repair. Repair is the gold. And so we have to have ways to do that. And it's really best in community, having a group of families who are working on community. This is why, ashrams are really beneficial, where they support families. If an ashram is allowing families to grow, the children can grow up in a spiritual community, or at least have a satsang that you take the family to. It doesn't have to be in the Vedic tradition. It can be in any tradition. God's not confused about who she is. God comes in infinite forms for infinite people for the infinite path, just like Ayurveda is so unique. Every person needs a different diet. Every car requires different fuel. Every person has a different relationship with God. So it doesn't matter if you call God Christ, Buddha, Krishna, Kali, Shiva, Devi, Buddha, Allah, John, George. Doesn't matter. But having a group of people who are focused on the divine is essential. That's the Sangha, that's the satsang, that's the family. It's all together. This way, conscious parenting, conscious community, all of this becomes conscious relationship. It becomes the path that we can actually have an awakened society, and our nervous systems can relax into safety, and all those old karmas can unfold. So back to the self, bringing it back to the self. It begins with us. And Ayurveda, yoga, all these give us the practices, the daily practices, the rituals, the reflections for awakening, for creating consciousness in all of our relationships. So one of the daily practices I really encourage doing, it's basically 5 steps. Number 1 is do a morning self-check-in. What am I feeling today? What do I need? Not what do I want? What do I need today? And again, that most important question, who am I? And how do I want to show up in the world? Okay. And gratitude. I recommend having a gratitude practice every morning and evening. In the morning, either saying it internally out loud or writing it into a paper. If you're in a family, every night at the dinner table with the family, every person can go around and say 2 or 3 things they're grateful for. Your digestion improves, the love improves, safety improves, trust improves, and you have a good night's sleep. And if necessary, having a weekly truth-telling check-in, even if it's just with yourself in the mirror, but usually with a friend, your lover, your family. And if you are in a relationship, I do recommend doing the eye-gazing practice, looking into each other's eyes and holding each other's heart and breathing and just connecting. Don't talk, just breathe and connect and just be with that person. You can actually do that practice with your children. You can do that practice with your friend. It doesn't have to be a sexual practice. It can be, but you can sit and hold anyone's heart with your hand through their clothes and look at them in the eyes and just breathe together and connect. It's such a powerful practice. It allows a softening in a way that not too many other things do. Not that other things don't, but it really does work. And then doing journaling, asking really difficult questions. How do I see myself? Do I see myself in a positive light? Do I see my faults? What is the talk that I do internally? Do I have positive self-talk or negative self-talk? Am I abandoning myself? Am I betraying myself in my relationships? Really asking these intense self-reflective questions in a journal practice. So morning self-check-in, gratitude rituals, weekly truth-telling check-ins, breathing and connecting, and journaling. These are very powerful practices that really lead to an awakening. And on another level, you can use Ayurveda's tools as well. Like Ayurveda offers us powerful herbs, like adaptogenic herbs for emotional regulation. Like there's these beautiful adaptogens. It means it adapts to whatever we need it to do, but helps to regulate the nervous system to get out of the sympathetic fight, freeze, fawn, or flight. Ashwagandha, Brahmi, Shatavari, Tulsi, or the magical medicinal mushroom Lingji, the mushroom of immortality, reishi. These adaptogenic herbs can be used to help us regulate our emotions. We need help from the plant kingdom. We need help from our friends. If you have the time and space to do it, panchakarma doesn't just, it's the Ayurvedic cleansing, the 5 cleansing actions. It doesn't just cleanse the physical body. It cleanses out those old emotional residues stuck in the tissues. The issues are in the tissues. Panchakarma clears it out. That's why when I've been in India and the panchakarma clinics, the people really need emotional and mental support too, because it's a lot. And then again, we've talked about it before, doing the dinacharya, the daily rhythms, because that really does foster safety for the nervous system. And then rejuvenation. We need rest and rejuvenation. It's called ojas, that cellular vitality, that deep relational, cellular, emotional juice that gives us life force. It's the ojas, the rasayana rejuvenation therapy to bring life back into the body. And doing more Vedic practices, chanting of mantras. Aham prema, I am divine love. Om tat sat, I am that. It doesn't have to be in Sanskrit. It can just be I am love, I am light, I am love, I am light. It can be in whatever language or tradition you want it to. Gazing at the fire, staring at a candle flame, doing a sankalpa, making an intention for your life, for your relationship with yourself, for your relationship with another. The Agnihotra, the Vedic fire rituals, with the intentions of burning up these past karmas, these samskaras, with the intention, light transforms darkness. Light transforms everything. That's the Agnihotra. We can offer what's not working into that sacrificial fire with intention and bring it to light. Allow love to serve as the guru. Not the external guru, the internal guru. The word guru, it means remover of darkness and the bestower of light. And you can look at it like this. G, you are you. G, you are yourself. G, you are you. You remove your own darkness and you bring your own light. Relationship, conscious relationship with ourselves, with others. It's not a destination somewhere out in the future. It is the path you're on right now. It's happening right now. We will stumble and fall. We will get bloody. We will get scraped, and we will get up. Get up, keep going, don't stop. Don't just lay on the ground bleeding. Get up and go. Just do it. Every breath we take, every interaction we have, every conflict, every intimate caress and silence, that's all part of it. That's all part of the spiritual practice. And it's really important, really, really important to remember this. Your lover, your partner, your beloved, they're not the source of your happiness or your fulfillment or your sorrow or your pain. They are only your mirror. They're your initiator. They're your reflection of the divine. They're reflecting to you most likely where you're not. And when they're clear, they're a reflection of yourself. To walk this path of awakening, of living an awakened life, whether you're with yourself or in a relationship, is not easy. I've never met someone who's had it easy. If you have, I'm not sure what's going on for you, come share that with us. We can have a podcast. We can interview you. If your life has been nothing but easy and you're in a higher state of bliss, let's find out how to do that, because I've never seen that. Okay. So to walk this path, it's not easy. But it's sacred and it's holy and it's necessary, and we're here. We have no other choice. It is the way. It is the way. It is the way. It's the way of love. It's the way of the heart. And as Ram Dass said, we're all just walking each other home. So let's make it easier, and let's walk with grace, and let's hold ourselves and hold each other in devotion. Let's hold each other and ourselves to love, to truth, and to liberation together. We're not isolated islands. We're not isolated cells. We're a unified field. A butterfly flaps its wings here in Antarctica, and it changes the wind current on Jupiter. Every thought, emotion, feeling we have, everything we do affects everything we do. So let's do it with love, and let's do it with commitment, and let's do it with truth and devotion to ourselves and to the path. I sincerely, deeply appreciate your attention and presence and energy today. And if anything I said today resonated with you, take it home. If it didn't, leave it behind. And if it really resonated with you, share this with someone who you think it could also resonate with. Share this whole podcast, share this episode, and also subscribe to the podcast so you can get weekly updates. And if you feel inspired, review and rate it, and continue listening and sharing the journey. And in the next 2 weeks, we will be deep diving 2 aspects we discussed this week: Shiva and Shakti, the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and what it means to truly embody the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and what it means when we're not embodying that, and how to get back to that embodiment. So fill your hearts with love, express it in everything you do, and until next time, may grace be with you. Namaste.